Hey there, welcome to the Thriving and Wellness Podcast with Haley and Caitlin. This podcast is for women who are tired of just surviving and ready to truly thrive. It's time to reclaim your health and build trust in your body.
Join us as we mythbust nutrition topics, tackle your mindset, and dive into the nerdy side of women's health. Just a reminder that this is meant for educational purposes only and is not meant to be used for medical diagnosis or treatment. Now let's jump in. Hello, welcome back to the Thriving and Wellness Podcast. Today we are talking all about blood sugar, but oftentimes when we're talking about blood sugar, it's in relations to the different foods that you can and maybe should eat less of. Very carb related, about how we're eating to support good blood sugar control. But there are so many other things that influence our blood sugar response and may contribute to insulin resistance. So we wanted to make sure that we're talking about all of those other factors, because one thing that I hear a lot is people saying, I feel like I'm eating everything that I should be. I've cut out all of these foods, but I still have high blood sugar, or I'm still struggling with insulin resistance. And they feel like they don't have anything else to do, when in reality, there are a lot of other places that we can help support them in.
Yeah, and I see that a lot too, especially with the clientele I work with diabetes, as a diabetes educator, is coming to me and they are so confused, frustrated, often defeated too, when they're feeling like, I've done all the things, I've cut out all the carbs, like I don't understand what I'm doing wrong or what else I can do. So it can be really empowering to learn that there's actually a lot of other things that influence our blood sugar and might allow you, in some cases, to actually be more flexible with your food if you address these other things. So why don't we start off, before we jump into all of those, why don't we start off by getting clear about insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity, because I think we're going to use those terms quite a bit throughout this episode. So let's define what those are.
Yeah, so insulin is the hormone that helps bring blood sugar into the cell so that we can actually use it. So when there's insulin resistance, it's meaning that basically the insulin isn't working as well as we want it to. And so a high insulin resistance is not a good thing. And we want to support insulin sensitivity. We want to support that insulin working better.
So as insulin resistance progresses, if it's not addressed, it can turn into type 2 diabetes for some people. So that's usually the progression of the disease. Is some people will have insulin resistance for years. And there's some people that have insulin resistance that it might not ever progress to type 2 diabetes. They just have this low level of insulin resistance. So the reason why this is an issue is that it impacts how your body metabolizes the carbohydrates and uses the energy. So it can negatively impact your energy metabolism, obviously, and keep your blood sugar higher, which can lead to other consequences too. So one thing we want to say too is there are some people online, or the way the blood sugar is talked about online sometimes, I think we can get it in our heads that we don't want to see any fluctuations in our blood sugar. Like we want a flat line with our blood sugar, especially now with continuous glucose monitors becoming more widely available. I think people are fearful when they see any sort of fluctuation or rise, like, oh, I need to cut that out. Like I need to stop eating blueberries because they raise my blood sugar. But that's not our goal. We don't want a flat line. It's normal to see some fluctuations, even with a healthy level of insulin sensitivity, aka your insulin hormone is working efficiently, right? And so that is completely normal and actually has some other benefits too. Like, for example, hormone or thyroid hormone conversion. Like, we want to have some of those fluctuations. There's some benefits to that too. So where it becomes an issue is if your blood sugar is fluctuating too much, we're seeing like these peaks and valleys, or it's consistently sitting higher than we like to see it.
Yep. So we are going to go through a bunch of different factors that can influence kind of our blood sugar response and insulin sensitivity. We are going to cruise through these like relatively quickly, but there are a couple of them where we have other episodes where we've already done a deeper dive. So we'll give you some recommendations if you're wanting to look into some of these other pieces further. So one of the first ones we're going to talk about is body composition. So muscle mass is so important for helping to increase that insulin sensitivity. So this is why so often we are recommending strength training for a lot of our patients as part of their exercise routine.
Mm-hmm. I like to describe muscle as energetically expensive, meaning it requires more energy or calories to maintain muscle mass than like fat mass, right? And so that's part of why it can help with insulin sensitivities because it needs more energy. It wants to bring more in. So having more muscle mass can help to increase that sensitivity because your body requires more of that energy. So shifting your body composition can help with blood sugar management. And this is where I have a bone to pick with, I'm going to call out doctors, doctors or anyone who recommends like just general weight loss for blood sugar or diabetes management. Yes, the research shows weight loss can be really beneficial, but the issue comes when we're just like cutting calories without being strategic about it and we're prioritizing the number on the scale over anything else because more often than not we're going to be losing that muscle mass first because it's energetically expensive and our body's smart. So if it's lacking energy, it's like, hey, well, I'm going to get rid of this energy hog here and use what I have available to me, right? So that can ultimately make your body composition or shift your body composition in a less favorable way, right? So we want to do what we can to maintain as much muscle mass as we work on the weight loss piece.
Yes, the other thing that I see from people who I tend to see it more in people that are having more of a like disordered eating
Mhm.
mentality where they see when they do cardio activities, they can see that they burned,
Yep.
500 calories in that exercise, whereas when they do strength training, they're not seeing as big of a number, but and in the moment like that's accurate, but in the long run doing more of the strength training is going to have your body burn more calories in the day to day when you're sitting on the couch watching TV and sitting at your desk working and not actually burning yourself to the ground on your elliptical.
Yeah, that's like the number one way. There's so many things online of ways to boost your metabolism. Like building muscle mass will actually do that,
Yes.
right? So building muscle mass helps to increase your basal metabolic rate. And we're not going to go into all of that right now, but like you just said, like you're going to be burning more. If a 150-pound person, there's two people. One has a much higher muscle mass than the other. Sitting on the couch, the person with more muscle mass is going to be burning more calories. So even if you don't see a shift in your weight on the scale, if you had a shift in your body composition, that's going to help you metabolically.
Yep. All right. Kind of adding into, this piece is your movement throughout the day. So we'll often encourage patients when we're like really focusing in on good blood sugar control, is adding in movement, yes, throughout the day, but ideally after meals, because at that point our blood sugar is elevated because we've just eaten something that hopefully includes carbs because we want our meals to be balanced. And adding in that movement can help bring our blood sugar levels down faster than if we were to just sit after a meal.
Exactly, because again, you're utilizing energy, so that opens up more of those doors for that insulin to attach onto and bring that sugar glucose in. And we did a Monday motivation episode on some fun ways to get more movement in and ways to maybe rethink your movement a couple weeks ago or last week. We published it on the 26th of August. So go back and take a listen to that if you need a little bit more inspiration for the movement piece.
Yep. One thing I want to add in here, I feel like, so there was one thing that was kind of going around, it was popular on the internet, of like walking for 10 minutes after meals, which is great. Like if you have the time to walk for 10 minutes after breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's incredible. Good for you. But most of the people that we work with, and I know for you and I, we don't always have 10 minutes to go for a walk after our meals. So it doesn't have to be, again, that long or that structured of an exercise. I tell people, get up and do some squats, you know, if you can. Or if you're working from home, this is a great time to grab a load of laundry and go up the stairs. Do things that you're going to have to do anyways, that is adding in some of that movement.
Or if you sit at a desk and you have a standing desk as an option, do that. Or makeshift a standing desk. Getting up from your seated position can help as well.
I will sometimes, like I'm sitting at my desk, so you're gonna have to kind of visualize this. And I will, like, my feet are flat on the floor and I will tap one knee up till it hits like the bottom of my desk. And it's almost like a lower ab exercise, but it's what I do if I'm like feeling really sleepy, to just move my body a little bit if I'm having to stay like sitting at my desk, but it's adding in some of that movement too.
Yeah, getting that movement throughout the day can definitely help, just like as an energy boost too, which I think is a good transition into our next point is sleep, which so many people struggle with these days for a multitude of reasons. But your sleep, both the quality and the quantity, so how well you're sleeping, how consistent your sleep is, how much you're getting in general on a regular basis, that can significantly, there's some really good research on this, significantly impact your blood sugar, not only long-term overall, but there's research to show even if you had like one night of poor sleep, if overall you're a pretty consistently good sleeper, if you had one night of bad sleep, that can impact how your body metabolizes carbs the next day. So that's not meant to be like discouraging or anything. It's normal to have a couple of nights of bad sleep here and there. But if this is something you struggle with a lot, then maybe this is the area to focus on and understand, why is sleep such an issue for me?
Yeah. If you are interested in kind of learning more about sleep, its effect on your body, and some things that you can do to support yourself in that area, we have a great episode all focused on circadian rhythm from this season. So season 3, episode 3. So you can go take a listen to that one.
Awesome. Yeah, we're referencing a lot of different episodes here because with all of these, there's so much to talk about that there's no way that we could do an episode where we dive deep into all of these while talking about all of them. So highly recommend you check out all of those. Is there anything else you want to say about sleep?
The only other thing I wanted to say just about like why we're referencing all of these other episodes, we talk about blood sugar every day, all the time. It's within every single conversation. And so I think this episode really goes to show like how important blood sugar is and how it can be affected by everything in our life. And so we're going to continue to talk about blood sugar all the time, every day. So, it's going to come up in future episodes and we'll constantly be, referencing other episodes as we, continue to help support you in balancing your blood sugar.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to say with some of these, but with sleep, this relationship kind of goes both ways, which like your sleep can impact your blood sugar, but your blood sugar can also impact your sleep. Like, for example, if you're waking up consistently around like 2 to 4 a.m., we've talked about this in other episodes too, probably that circadian rhythm episode. But if you're waking up consistently at that time, it might be a blood sugar related thing. So there might be some shifts you need to make with your food side of things to help with the sleep aspect. And then ultimately that improvement in sleep will help with the blood sugar management. So all connected.
Yes. Okay, next we're going to talk about stress. And stress can definitely impact your sleep. That's what I tend to notice the most for myself. I struggle with sleeping when I'm really stressed. But just stress in and of itself is going to affect cortisol, which is one of our stress hormones. And then that can ultimately have a negative impact on our blood sugar. And so, managing stress. Do we have an episode on that?
We should. I think we do. We'll have to look up what that was. We didn't have that one prepared. So we'll include that in the show notes if we did that. If not, we have a plan to talk about it. It's in my mind somewhere. But yeah, stress is a big one for sure. And stress is such a tough one too. So when we talk about stress, and I'm sure we've mentioned this before, it's not about getting rid of stress completely. Like, we're human. There's going to be stress. There's going to be higher stress seasons of life. It's going to be day-to-day stress. It's just about how we manage it, right?
Mhm.
What our coping strategies are and our level of resilience to get through that. And I think that is a good time to reference our self-care episode, right?
Mhm.
Because if we're consistently taking care of our bodies physically and mentally, then when that stress arises, we have a little bit more resilience to get through that.
Mhm. Um, in relation to stress and really like all of these different things connect with each other. So I want to bring in our mineral status because that is going to be affected. Our stress is going to impact our mineral status. So when we're talking about minerals, we tend to focus on what we call like the macro minerals. So
Mhm.
sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Um, so those are impacted by stress, but it also affects our blood sugar response, those minerals. And there is tons that we can talk about when it comes to mineral status. So we really dive deep into those macro minerals, season 3, episode 1. We also touch on them with our episode with our guest Justine, because she talks about the HTMA, which is a test that we'll use to kind of assess that mineral status. So those are both great episodes for you to go back and listen to as well.
Yeah, and the mineral status one I find extremely interesting, for, again, multitude of reasons. But with the mineral status one specifically, I would say in the world of diabetes, so often it's recommended to like limit sodium intake and all this, but your sodium status can also influence your blood sugar. So if we go too low, or if you don't have adequate sodium, that can actually negatively impact it. So definitely interesting there.
Yeah, and I mean, magnesium is another huge one that's so important for blood sugar status, and then there are tons of medications or other supplements that's going to, use up more magnesium. So if you're not supplementing at all or at the right dose, based off of the other medications and supplements that you're taking, you may not have enough.
Yeah, and with the minerals too, we didn't really plan to go into this at all, just kind of reference that episode, but like the balance, like you're saying too, if we are kind of overdosing on certain minerals and not getting enough of others, like especially with the calcium magnesium ratio, that can have a huge impact on our blood sugar. So I don't know if we go into that in detail on that episode, but that's a pretty interesting relationship there too. So working on those ratios can definitely help.
Yep. Okay, gut health. Some super interesting stuff with gut health. This is what I feel like we tend to see when we're looking through like a GI map, which is a stool
Mhm.
test that we'll run on patients. And so typically, at least when I'm running a GI map, I'm not looking at it necessarily at a blood sugar perspective. We're trying to kind of resolve some GI issues, but there are certain things that might pop up where it's like, oh, this is why you're also struggling with
Mhm.
resistance or extreme sugar cravings, whatever it may be. So we'll look at one of the markers on there is Akkermansia, which is a specific bacteria strain. So low levels of that bacteria, which I'll see like less than detectable limits, like
I
none.
often see that.
Frequent. Yes. So that's a super important bacteria, high levels of inflammation in the gut, or like candida overgrowth. Those are the things that I tend to see that influence somebody's blood sugar control the most.
Yeah, and I think with those, it's a mix, but they can kind of directly impact our blood sugar, but it's more indirectly with just like adding to chronic inflammation or how it changes like our diets and stuff. So pretty interesting stuff. And I would say the same. I'm not doing a GI map to address blood sugar issues. Like
Right.
there's other things I would rather look at first before doing that, but it can definitely pop up and be interesting to clients if that's a piece of the health puzzle that we're working on.
Mhm.
So one of the last things we want to touch on was caffeine. And this isn't something that we're going to dive deep into, like, this is what the research says and everything, but more so like from personal experience and professionally, what we've seen with clients is for some people, it can be more of an appetite suppressant, whereas other people, it actually increases their appetite, and maybe it's from the increase in metabolic rate. But I've also seen for some of my people who wear continuous glucose monitors that the caffeine can impact their blood sugar.
Mhm.
So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. I know for myself, if I drink too much caffeine in a day, then I feel hungrier all throughout the
Mhm.
rest of the day. I feel like I get like low blood sugar pretty easily. And yeah, it does not make me feel good when I have too much caffeine. But I'll also like if I drink a cup of coffee first thing in the morning before I've had breakfast, it's very easy for me to push back my breakfast later. So I kind of feel that like appetite suppressant feeling right at first, and then as the day goes on, it's
Catches
probably
up with you.
not
Yeah.
every off.
So I didn't think about this before, but as you were talking about that, for me, and I'm wondering if this is true for you, if I'm drinking more coffee throughout the day, that usually also means I'm slacking on my water intake. So I'm wondering if it's more of like a hydration thing where you're not feeling as good, or we're seeing those changes in blood sugar, because we didn't write this down to talk about it, but your hydration status can also influence your blood sugar as well.
Right. Well, and we're probably drinking more caffeine on days when we didn't sleep as well. So it's like,
Can you see a theme here? It's all connected. And mineral status and gut health can impact stress response and sleep. So all of that. Basically, what we're trying to say here is it may or may not be one specific thing. And that's true for almost every client we work with. In case we work with, of course, there are some people that it's pretty straightforward, like a couple small tweaks, and we're like, we're good to go. But for other people, it can be a little bit more complex, and we need to stop looking at our health. For example, like with blood sugar, fixating only on the carbohydrates and getting frustrated with nothing changes, but also thinking about our bodies and our life as a whole, that all these different things can impact our health, can impact how our body's responding to blood sugar. So thinking outside of the box a little bit.
Yep. Now, if you are feeling like I need to also work on my diet, not just all of these other things that we just cruised through. Our foundations episode from season 1, it's episode 6. Blood sugar is a piece of one of those foundations. So we, we touch on the diet aspect of this a little bit more in that episode.
Yeah, so go check those episodes out that we referenced and reach out to us online too to let us know if any of these were surprising to you, because I always find that really interesting if someone was like, oh, I had never heard about the sleep aspect, or whichever it was, if any. So reach out to us if there's one piece that you want to hear more about and we haven't already dove into it on the podcast, then we'd be happy to maybe explore that further. And we're curious what you guys want to hear more about. So let us know.